Okay, well, thank you so much for coming to the event tonight on UX and product management prototyping. And as outlined in the title here, a happy marriage between product and UX. Before we jump into that, I want to quickly overview tonight's flow as well as BPMA at large. What we're going to have tonight is two speakers who I'll allow them to introduce themselves, talk about different prototype techniques and collaboration between product and user design. After those two presentations, we'll break out into small groups just to reflect on what we were presented, how it applies to you, your role, and what you could apply tomorrow. And then we'll come back for open Q&A with the speakers. So with that cadence in mind tonight, BPMA is really about three things: landing new opportunities. I know it's absolutely crazy, the hiring market right now, as well as people switching and transitioning roles. Let BPMA help you with that and take advantage of our job board. Also network with your colleagues. We have a monthly cadence of BPMA Connect events that are specifically designed to connect you to PMs who are facing similar problems, whether that's a hardware PM or a PM specifically for healthcare or a PM specifically in enterprise and or startup company. You'll find your tribe there, your people. We also want to help you level up your skills. So how can you tomorrow, after attending and participating in a BPMA event, take away new tips, tricks, and techniques that can make you more effective PM tomorrow? Now, we don't do this alone. We have sister companies outlined at the bottom here, whether it's the PEF or the Product Executive Forum for more senior PMs, the Agile Project Open, Women in Product, and then of course our annual event, Product Camp, that we're a part of. We also couldn't do this without the help of our sponsors. So I want to pause on this screen and say a big thank you to all the companies listed here to helping making these events possible. Also want to pause for a moment to see if we have any sponsors on the line who want to come on and talk about their specific company, the services that they provide to the product community here. Great. So big thank you again. And okay, with that, I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen. KD, I believe you're presenting first, correct me if I'm wrong, perhaps Tim?
Tim is presenting.
Okay, Tim, if you want to take away control, we'll allow you both to do your own intros and drive the slides. We'll let you know when we can see them.
Sure thing. Let me share my screen.
Okay, we can see it on slide 5.
All right. Are we in business?
We're in business.
All right, cool. Katie, since you're on the left side, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Katie Singer-Ninja, good evening. I'm the Senior Director of UX at a company called Clarivate. I've been in industry for 16 plus years, 10 years or more on the UX US side of things. I've been a UX designer, a UX director, product manager, and way past in a previous life, I was also a hell of a UI engineer. So I've been there, done that. And right now I manage a small UX team within Clarivate. We work on some products for biopharma, as well as I'm a product manager for an enterprise design system team as well.
Cool. Thanks, Katie. Hey, everyone. My name's Tim Fu. I'm VP Product at Valor Performance. I come from a background in passion for entrepreneurship. So Valor Performance is a pre-Series A or seed stage startup that focuses on executive and performance coaching. Shameless plug, we're hiring both a product manager and a UX designer currently. So please take my email down and send me your resume if you're looking for a new role. But I came to Boston for grad school, hung around and worked my way through the kind of product management career track at later stage startups, or early and later stage startups. A couple of years ago, helped my wife start a company called Family Dinner, which is based in Boston, and that's the CEO for that company, and I am VP Product at Valor. All right. We will continue on. And I'll try to, thanks, Michael, for managing the chat for us. I appreciate that. Sorry for the small font here, but we'll just give a really high level outline. So I'm going to go first. I'm going to talk a little bit about product research, identifying new opportunities, both as an entrepreneur, if you're getting started with yourself and a co-founder or a team of co-founders, or at a larger company, maybe you're looking for new product feature ideas, ways to improve, or a new product altogether. And then we'll talk a little bit about prioritizing and filtering those ideas, qualifying them for willingness to pay, and testing your hypothesis. And I'll really focus on the earlier stages of the product ideation process, and then hand it off to KD for more of the kind of tools, methodologies, prototyping exercises that you can do to take an idea from a qualified market need into a design. We both, I think, specialize in software design, but a lot of this is extensible to other types of products as well, whether it be hardware or other. We'll, as Michael said at the top of the call, we'll wrap up. We'll talk a little bit about pitfalls, common mistakes, what you can do tomorrow, and somewhere in there, we'll also have some breakout rooms for discussion and reflection. Cool. Without further ado, so I'm going to, again, kind of focus on these earlier stages, and then Katie is going to take us through the later stages and the mechanics of really prototyping, the work that happens between product and UX to bring an idea or a concept to fruition and get it to the next level. All right. You guys have probably all heard this one before. If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And this is one of my least favorite quotes because it glorifies the product visionary, the mysterious product visionary. I start with this because I've heard it at many startups, many companies, early stage, later stage. And it, I think, sends the wrong message. In the context that it's typically used, it glorifies that kind of, only one person has this visionary and everyone should be Steve Jobs. But in the context, in a slightly different context, when we think about maybe a jobs to be done framework, and you ask the question, well, why would I want faster horses? A good product or UX team member would be thinking in that mindset and would be asking why, and would be going through the motivations and the goals behind a statement or a question asked by a customer or user. So if you think about something like this, it's a great lead in to say, like, all right, well, tell me why you want faster horses. Do you want to just get from point A to point B a little faster? Tell me more about that. So we're going to talk a little bit about the research process, why it's important, and how to do it. And then I'll hand it off to Katie to really teach us how to do it. So why do product research at all? The goal is to really minimize business risk before you invest in building a solution. So to truly understand your customer, the need, the user, so that you can identify market needs and also identify potential solutions that are hypotheses and test those hypotheses in a way that is lean, that's lightweight, that's low cost. So you can confirm you're building what's needed by the user and no more necessarily as the first start. You can always build more later, but resources are not infinite. So we just want to get to know what the user's needs are first before we get started. A common pitfall, and I'm guilty of this in my career, some product managers, the leadership team comes to you and says, hey, Tim, come up with a product roadmap and bring it back to us, and we'll bless it, or we'll give you feedback, and then you can go off on your merry way, and we'll everything will be great and we'll march forward together. And that sometimes works. Sometimes it doesn't work though. And oftentimes when it doesn't work, there may be misalignment between the direction the product manager thinks things needs to go. There may be misalignment between the leadership team and where the market's headed. There may be misalignment between the leadership team and the leadership team, which is more often than you might think. So I stole this slide from a friend, an old associate of mine, Ravi Mehta, who's at Reforge now. But they talk about a product strategy stack. And I thought this was a really useful illustration of the need to clarify mission and company strategy before talking about product strategy and product roadmap. Those things need to guide the product strategy and product roadmap. So when a leadership team, whether it's you yourself and your co-founders or your C-suite, or the people you're working with or working for, when they come to you and say like, hey, we need a product roadmap, oftentimes it's great to start with aligning and making sure that that team is aligned on what the mission is and what the company's strategy is. If people are having a hard time articulating a mission or a North Star and how you achieve that North Star, then you might be wary of putting together a product roadmap in advance of doing those things, because eventually there will be disagreements, misalignment, and you may have to take a few steps backward to revisit those things. So identifying the problem before the solution. Many times we find technology and we try our best to plug it into different problems. And sometimes that works. But when working in software and working in with users who have a problem already, it's best to start trying to understand that user. Who are they, first of all? And what problem are you trying to help them solve? Be clear about that. When you're asking them questions and doing your research, keep an open mind, ask open-ended questions, not yes, no questions, but tell me a story about this. How might you, if you wanted to solve this problem, take care of that? What tools are you using already today, and why do you like them? Why do you not like them? Those types of questions help you understand what the problem is, and then also how your solution might be different from the existing solutions out there today. Even if that solution is a non-solution, even that solution is well, I don't really do this right now, but it's painful and it costs me money or time. And then finally, and I can't stress this last bullet, this fourth bullet enough, what is your target customer willing to pay for your solution? This is the reason why many products end up in the product graveyard. We'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute with a story to illustrate. I talked about, or I included some resources and some links down here, which maybe we can provide in the chat or in the notes after this call. But these are a few tools that might be useful to you as frameworks, or just ways to kind of jot down and document your hypotheses as you pull them together. And your user interviews, your customer touch points can help you test those hypotheses and refine them over time. All right, let's talk about willingness to pay for just another minute. It's often overlooked when developing new products and concepts, especially with entrepreneurial founders. They just get so excited and passionate about this idea. And sometimes that passion and that idea can really run, and the willingness to pay is actually there. But it's really worth researching upfront to make sure that you're solving a problem that the market is willing to pay for. Not to shortchange KD and UX, but if the willingness to pay is there and the problem is painful enough, sometimes, especially early days, you can get away with poor design and poor UX because the problem is so intractable and hard. That said, Obviously, everything is better when product and UX are working beautifully together, and it's an incredible way to differentiate. But you really want to start by identifying a problem where there's willingness to pay, and where that willingness to pay matches up with your business model, so that you can actually support a company and support the needs and the cost of servicing that need or that problem. Here's a dirty garage. This is a story that one of my mentors, Paul Beyer, tells often and illustrates the kind of need to focus on willingness to pay. So two homeowners, partners, they've moved into their home like 10 years ago, and they've got a couple kids, and the garage is filled up with bicycles and coolers and, you know, kid picnic tables. And they keep talking like, you know, I can't even park my car in my own garage anymore. Let's clean the garage. And they keep saying this for months and months and months. And someone even knocks on their door one day and says, hey, I will clean your garage for $100. Would you like me to clean your garage? And they're like, nah, thanks for the offer, but we'll get to it. We've been meaning to get to it. We'll get to it. It's not anything crazy. We'll get to it. And then the next day, there's a rainstorm, and some water starts leaking into the bed. Just a little drip, but enough to wake up the parents. And the dad gets on the phone and he calls the roofing guy and he says, hey, come over to my house. I need this roof fixed right away. And the roofer's like, well, how bad is it? He's like, I don't care. Whatever it costs, I'll pay it. And the roofer says, okay, how about $2,000? Sounds like a small drip. And he's like, sure, no problem. Click. So the moral of the story is, you just want to make sure that whatever problem you're solving, there's a market there and there's a real need, and customers are willing to pay for you to solve that need. Qualify that early. Ask the people that you're researching with if they would buy your product in whatever prototype form it is, whether it's a service or a product or a good, a piece of hardware. Ask that early and often so you can qualify that and test your hypotheses. Let's talk about qualitative research. So one of the best ways to start, especially in the early ideation phases, is to start with qualitative research. And sometimes, I know I've been guilty of this in the past, sometimes it's hard to, you know, all right, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to make a call list, I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to schedule time and go call people. It's a lot easier to like just sit with your buddies and make a bunch of ideas on a whiteboard and brainstorm and be like, let's go build it, and then go build it. But this is a really worthwhile process. And after 5 or 10 interviews, you get a pretty good idea of whether you're on the right track or not. So it's not a huge lift. I really encourage you to do this. It's essential at the beginning of any discovery process. When you're talking and prepping for these interviews, you want to write down a list of questions that are more kind of a menu for you to choose from as you do the interview. It's helpful because you want to make sure that you're not asking yes/no questions and that you're not leading the witness. Yes/no questions are like, do you need X, Y, solution X, Y, Z? Or what would you think of the solution that I'm thinking of building, and leading them towards that solution, as opposed to asking them to tell you a story about the last problem in this area they had, or a solution that they may already be using, and the pros and cons of that. And last bullet, again, don't forget to ask about willingness to pay. You may find your first customer. And the very least, you'll get to know whether there's a market for your product. Quantitative research, there's a bunch of different kinds of quantitative research, qualitative research too, but quantitative research, you could be looking at macroeconomic trends, you could be looking at industry trends around a specific product, you could be looking at products that already exist and you want to build a competitor. Once you're really in the product development process, prototyping, all that stuff, you want to make sure you're also collecting quantitative feedback. So as you build that prototype and deploy it, or just kind of show it off to folks and get their feedback, be sure to ask them, is this something you'd use? Do you want to do pricing research again on willingness to pay? There's plenty of pricing surveys out there, Medatic pricing, conjoint analysis, all types of different tools that you can use to judge whether people like your solution, how valuable it is to them, what different types of features are more valuable or less valuable, and how likely they'd be willing to share it with a friend and spread by word of mouth. And with that, I will pass it on to KD. KD, do you want to take it from here? Stop share and let you pull the slides
Sure.
out. All right, sir, all yours.
Give me 1 second. Something is off. My mouse just stopped working for some reason.
No problem. And Katie, if you want me to continue sharing, I'm happy to. You just tell me when to advance the slides.
Oh, that's awfully nice of you. So, yeah, let's continue with that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So,
see, a happy marriage.
well said. All right. So, Tim covered, how product can really work with UX early on, and UX be involved in that early on, converge towards UX. Let's talk about when this is reversed, or when you have understood that you want to be together, but then like some of the reasons why you need to work on some activities together, you're not clear, and you also are not clear on how. So let's talk about those things first. So let's approach this from both product towards UX and UX towards product, right? To generalize it, because different companies have different structures and resources right now. So I'm hoping there are some UXers in the audience who are ex-UXers, but I'm also talking to product folks who want to be proactive and want to understand how to nudge the UX towards them sometimes, or when the UX function is there in the company and how to best use it. Sadly, there are too many companies out there that have UX and product working in silos. It doesn't have to be this way. So user research is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. And I do believe their product and UX focus on user research together and early on, as upfront as possible in a product cycle, really focus on user needs, not wants, and other things that Tim mentioned. Products do come out more user-oriented. There are other pieces to it. The teams have to be user-oriented. They have to be empathizing with users now. We'll talk about that. Why is research important? First of all, research is not the same as feedback. That is the biggest misunderstanding and also common pitfall that happens. Even before UX team in a company that has maybe a mature-ish product is brought in, everything that's researchy is considered as feedback. But no, it's very simple to confuse these two, but it's also simple to understand. User research embodies certain techniques through which we extract certain items, certain insights that will go into the product's design and other decisions that go with the product. It's that simple. We can get that feedback after a product is made available to users or after the design is done. But before we do it, it's much easier and pays off a lot more. And the feedback is unstructured, abstract, and very unspecific at times. But user research focuses us to have other aspects that we may not consider down the line, or we may consider to be not important, like empathizing with the users, personas, product usability, mental models, day in the life of, or test drive of the products and usage analysis, which a lot of companies do right now and think that let's put out analysis and we'll find out. That's one part of the user research. So a lot of things can and should overlap with a healthy product management function. So if a UX team is set up to do it, and if you want to go after some of these, you can bring in a UX team to to work with you on these and tell them that you need these things. The decision should be made by combining qualitative and quantitative so that the team has confidence in product decisions. When one is weaker than the other, then the gut instinct starts following, and then you have to live with those decisions. So let's say you have existing products and you want to improve the experience mapping. Um, really helps as it reveals a lot of pains, and pains are nothing but opportunities. So what can you do if you have research? You know already the body of research is there, was done by previous product managers or a consulting agency or some other folks, or a user researcher. Hold them tighter than your true love, and hold them accountable to give you all the reports and the quals and quants, and ask for reports that help you make those decisions. And if it's not there, then at least we have asked for it. Support the research function, as it will pay a lot of dividends going forward. So next slide, please. So let's talk about examples. In my company, we are religiously using atomic research. It's a very specific way to do user research. Every observation, whether it's A/B testing or interview or contextual inquiry, or comment in Salesforce or feedback via Pendo, ends up here. And then we follow up with those users more if we are not clear about certain aspects. We then generate insights. This is done in Airtable in our world, but you can use any other tool. The top insights, as shown in that chart from the left, 2 or 3 insights, can become your product decisions for the next iteration. Again, why do this? Because research inspired design, when followed in a company, almost gives you 3x returns on your revenue. It's proven now. It's not up for debate. Depend how long that'll happen. That'll take some time, but user research, and that's why I was speaking more on this at length here. It's the most important thing you can do for your product. Next slide, please. Moving on to ideation. So UX should bring product folks into the ideation. It's not a sacred ritual, folks, that only UX team has to do. Everyone has ideas. Developers, product managers, SMEs. We are all creative folks. We just need the right facilitation and environment to bring it out. And it's important to ideate with the inception points of product managers, as the vision is clear in their head. And they have done a lot of market research, which byproducts of that are also functionality pieces that we might need, especially if the product manager has been doing, say, Kano analysis, and they have put a lot of time into understanding, okay, these certain features are attractors, need to focus on those as a UX team to design. And that has been done for you already, so you don't need to duplicate the effort to find those things out. We can just focus, deep dive on those, and understand those a bit more. Ideating and prototyping bring a variety of thoughts and diversity of opinions, which in this day and age is really, really important, as you must be seeing a lot in your social feeds. It's very important to design for everyone, especially if you want to reach out to a larger user segment. Again, how to do it? It's simple, very simple. Do it together and make it a habit of it. Be relentless with it. A team that ideates together stays together, as I say, and do crazy eights together. Do design sprints, yes, but keep in mind, design sprint is not about design teams. Some of the product managers don't like it because they think it's only a UX team does it. No, design teams are about the entire product team, right? And if you find yourself in a design team where there are 8 designers and only product managers, speak up. Say we need more representation product managers in that design sprint. And typically a squad can really manage a design sprint. Even it doesn't have to be 5 days, 3 days only. And next slide, please. Here's an example of me doing Envision freehand exercise with product managers and developers, right? Because we wanted the API of this mobile application to be a byproduct. It was an API first product. and we want to use the API separately because we wanted to let the consumers of this to design their experience themselves if they wanted to. So see how I've drawn lo-fi mocks to go along with API signatures. Next slide, please. Feedback sessions. UXers must do more feedback sessions with the product managers and SMEs. So if you as a product manager seeing that that's not happening, you are a stakeholder. It's your right to call it out as early as possible, because again, just like ideating, there needs to be more touch points where the entire team should be involved as earlier in the process as possible. Too many times I see designers spending less time understanding research and product needs and way too much time in perfecting even the low fidelity markups, high fidelity markups, trying to focus on whether the designs are telling the right story, whether they forget or did they even capture the premise of the entire story to begin with. And so see how I've when we'll go to the next screen, the process that I've outlined here is a design thinking process that my team uses. And that's my go-to process, whether you're using lean UX or design sprints, 3-day, 5-day, or whether you're using some stretched out agile way of doing design. Understand what your phases are. In each phase, your activities might depend on your UX team, the maturity of it, and your company, but there needs to be feedback sessions every time substantive output is produced. And depending on the company, you might use different types of feedback sessions as well. Obviously, we have it all been remote, but it could be just 15-minute meetings. Hey, this is what we have produced. What can we do next? Gather the feedback, roll that back into the designs. You will realize that if we make a habit of this, more feedback sessions happen. The friction points, the disagreement points become lesser and lesser because the teams learn each other's mental wavelength, and it becomes a habit with the team going forward. Next slide, please. Sorry. So, right. So, apologies. So, virtual rooms. If 2020 has taught me anything, it's more about really that collaboration is not a secondary thing. It needs to happen all the time. And yes, it has made me a better remote worker, and it's also given me a lot of tips and tricks that I've tried because I've had more time to experiment with it, how I can collaborate more with my stakeholders, with my product managers, or my team can collaborate with them a lot early on. Again, the goal is to create a virtual room, especially when you're starting a new product or project, have every single piece of information on it, also have success criteria, have ground rules on how you're going to have meetings. I have ground rules on how feedback sessions will run. But I used to have a room in this company and previous company where all the UX projects that are going on will be on the walls, and product managers can come in. They can take a look. We'll take quick decisions and move on. But that obviously fell by the wayside starting last year. But now we really depend on Mural. I've also used Miro in the past. Everything is on the virtual room. It promotes visibility from a UX team. It promotes accountability from a UX team. You can also measure success and also see how the team is performing. And product managers can be part of those rooms, and it's also jot in their thoughts. It also helps you keep away multiple artifacts that really exhaust people and confuse people. What SharePoint versus Notion versus Wiki. Virtual rooms are the way to go. And do your meetings off of those rooms, present off of those rooms. and make sure that the rooms are clean and they become an artifact after the project is done. Anybody can go in back there and look at that. It can also become an architecture decision, because the overall product journey or experience map is also part of the architecture decision. Next slide, please. So this is an example, really a sample from Mural. I'm not at liberty to sharing my Mural page here, but if you see, it'll look like something like this. The what, the who, the why, the use cases are there, the flows are there, and very early markups are also there that tells a story how the product came along, where the decisions were taken, what are the open questions, and what are the risks. And so that it's not left out in the emails or people's pads. Everything is in this room. Next slide, please. Outcomes. This is very, very critical. This is something that a lot of teams don't do, and later on they find out that what they wanted from the success of the product was the same thing as what the other team wanted. But there's duplication of effort that happened. There's the issue of what we call missing out the metrics that would have been really cumulative and common to both product and UX. So sometimes product will want to use one metric, which may not be seen as something the UX would fall back on. It doesn't have to be that way. Again, if that's the case, that's still okay. You just have an agreement on that early on and not later. Really, to catch up on a product's usability stats later on will leave you very short-handed, because you might reach to only few adopters. You might only reach to few users. You want to plan these things really early on, and it's important that you know which metrics and outcomes you want to go for, because some of them take planning, and also they have to be done at 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 10 months mark. So have a workshop early on, especially when the product vision is set. You know what needs to be built, but how will we measure the success? Decide that, and what should come out of that is OKRs and metrics that are applicable to both product and UX. What I typically use is SUS and SuperQ. And usability testing, A/B testing, which is very, very quantitative method, gives you a lot of data that can be shared as a metric as well, that immediately, even after MVP, say substantive amount of UX has gone in, let's do a lot of A/B testing, especially with the designs that we could not get in, see if those were already better or we missed the mark on that, or what's in the product right now, can it be better? Netflix does this really, really well, and you don't even know it, but they're testing A/B testing with you. You're subject to them very silently, especially if you see their left-hand navigation. That has changed so many times. Well, it was latest, now it's more popular, now it's what's new, and they change the left-hand navigation because they want people to get access to the more and more content. That's how they drive the stickiness of their product. Next slide, please. So these are some of the metrics. They're tactical metrics and they're strategic metrics. You don't have to follow each metric from day one, and you won't be able to set up. Maybe if the MVP is really small, some of these metrics don't make sense because they're too early in the game. So decide on the metrics that you really want, understand the overlap that are really important for UX and product. Agree that, yeah, if we capture these 3 metrics and outcomes, then we can say the product was successful, the experience was successful, and more measurable outcomes can be added later. Next slide, please. So again, if you're looking for a framework on how to put on metrics that give you measurable outcomes, then Google's HOT framework is really great. And you can also then look at some other metrics that are out there that they don't have to be as expanded as the way Google has it, but the concept remains the same, that you want to measure different things along the way. A Super Q, for example, has 4 categories and the 8 questions, and you ask them, you'll get very, very good score on usability of the product. Also the perception and desirability of the product, which other metrics and techniques don't allow for. Next slide, please. So I'll let you take this, Tim.
Yeah, sure. So just to talk about some common pitfalls and mistakes, and just using this as a little bit of a rehash of what we talked about. Not one common pitfall or symptom you may run into is a lack of alignment, which comes from leaving the kind of alignment conversation, that company mission or team mission, and your strategy as a team too late. Not sharing a product and UX vision together and not collaborating enough can cause divergence in the goals, and then an unsuccessful product. Waiting too long to get feedback, not just from your users and potential customers, but also from your leadership team, and making sure that everything's aligned there. Making sure there's good communication, good compromise when needed, and sometimes just downscoping and saying, hey, you know what, we're looking too far ahead, maybe 2 or 3 steps ahead. Let's test this first thing that we agree on first. And as we see the results from that experiment come back, make a decision one way or the other on the more advanced stuff. Assuming one team is in charge of something, or fully owns the other one, is being a little territorial, that's tough. That's a symptom of maybe team interpersonal cultural problem, but you want to make sure you've chosen your team well, and there's a good working relationship there. One thing that's not on here that I harped on earlier, and maybe spent too much time on, but I'll plug it again, is making sure that you qualify willingness to pay early and often upfront, so that you're not building a solution that the market actually doesn't really need or isn't willing to pay for. And just making sure, lastly, that there's good teamwork and that everyone's in the room, not handing things back and forth necessarily, but putting your heads together and collaborating in a sincere and integral way. And Katie, I'll hand it back to you for this one.
So again, how can you avoid those pitfalls? How can you avoid those mistakes? You want to start doing some things right away, like product and UX should seek each other out, not wait for each other to come to them, especially service designers and researchers early on, right? As if anything, the experience economy and Citizens Bank is a great example. If you go into their banks, and the environment is very different, because they've understood that the product's not the experience. The experience for the customer needs to involve product, which is the service of banking, is in a way that they are desiring to go into the bank. They are desiring to, they're looking forward to the experience of actually going to banks. It just doesn't look like DMV. So they've understood that really well now going forward. And UX should work with product team as early in the process as possible, not even as a fly on the wall, right? Yeah, you're going to talk about market research. We're not going to go there. No, you should understand, because you will get sensitized to the ideas that are being discussed in those calls, the willingness to pay, what are the risks. You have to keep those in mind, even if those things are not forming as a guardrails of your design piece. But it's very, very important these days for you designers to know their business and hold product team accountable to give you that insight. And over time, they should really amalgamate. So go in each other's meetings where decisions are taken, as long as the facilitation is there, and align on the end goals. Whether it's release of a product in a certain shape or form with well tested quality UX, usability qualified feature packed product, or it could be just metrics that after we release this, we want adoption rate to go up. And the more you talk to product managers, the more the two teams together are approaching product experience, you tend to develop, less in context of the scope. You don't over design, you don't under design. But that also doesn't mean that the key aspects of products are left out of the MVP. So a lot of that happens because people don't talk early on. So if you look at this through UX maturity perspective or a product maturity perspective, there are different stages. You can call out different things are happening at different stages, but it's very clear that in the lower or lowest stages of UX, product and UX don't work together, and they're handing off stuff to each other. And over a period of time, either product debt or UX debt really builds up. But when the organizations are UX user driven, and this is the latest UX maturity model by Nielsen Norman Group, our design is a business strategy, and product management takes that into account from day one, rather than as a could have later. Same thing for product maturity. When it's really intuition driven, UX doesn't even come into picture, and product is really going by gut instincts, not validating their assumptions. But when it's a thriving product culture, all the teams own up to the product vision. That's where product and UX functions are working really, really together. And you see that a lot of that in a lot of companies. Very few companies today have that culture, not because they have special folks working there. It's because they have attained that culture, and they have maintained it, and they're relentless with it. That we'll do this one feature in the product, but we'll work together. We'll talk it through. We'll figure out everything about it, how it will impact the users, what needs it will meet, and what will be the success criteria of it. And the development implementation of it becomes secondary. I'll stop right there. You have anything to add there, Tim, on this one?
No, KD, I think you did a great job.
Excellent.
Michael, we'll hand it back to you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. A big round of applause virtually here for both of our speakers. I hope everyone found it to be incredibly helpful. KD or Tim, if we can go to the next slide, please. Some quick plugs. I just put an event feedback survey in the chat. I also linked to the Eventbrites for both of our upcoming events. July 13th, we're going to have a product leaders event on product discovery. And September 28th, taking some time off for the summer, we're actually going to have an event where we're talking about building products on the blockchain. So not just what is blockchain or deciphering hype from reality, but actually for product teams that are working on the blockchain, how do we think about that? So it should be interesting. As outlined at the beginning, what we're going to do now is do breakout rooms of about 4 to 5 people or so. What we'd love to do is for everyone to say one thing that they're going to take away to their job tomorrow. And we're going to do that for 5 minutes. Then we're going to come back for open Q&A. So I'll break everyone into breakout rooms now and see you back here in 5 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So we're just going to close now for open Q&A for a few minutes. We want to be respectful of everyone's evening, but also allow the entire group here to ask Tim and Katie any questions they have with regards to prototyping or UX and product collaboration. And you can feel free to just shout out your questions, or you can also put in the chat if your audio isn't working, and I can narrate those for you.
I actually have a question. I'm sorry, you go first.
Yeah, hi. Actually, I work in a company which deals with the B2B products. So how to, do research for prototyping, and if you are innovating a new product and looking for a design. So how should it differ from, like, because we have talked about research and usability and other stuff. This is the question to both of these speakers. Maybe they can, enrich me on that, how to work with B2B, because here maybe the user is like the staff of our client, and they are not actually the people who would be very much interested to buy, and the buyer is different. They are the VP and the the buyer and the users are different, so who will pay for it is not the same guy who will use it. So how to do that?
Tim, you want to take a shot at that first, please?
Sure, yeah. So I currently work at a B2B company. It's not easy. It's certainly not always easy. A couple of things that I'd recommend in B2B companies, in order to get good feedback from your buyers and from the paying customer, you really, as a product manager or UX, need to have a great relationship with your sales team and your customer success team, because they'll be the biggest advocates for those folks. And they can bring you back all of the touch points they have. There are some newer software tools that record sales calls. If your team records Zoom calls, they can kind of get you in the virtual room and you can follow up afterwards. But what you really want is a good relationship with those two teams, because they'll bring the things they're hearing back that they need for renewals, for new sales, for success, back to you and advocate for them. And when they bring them back to you, Christine and I were talking about this in our breakout room. When they bring them back to you, ask them to invite you to the next customer meeting and get in there and ask the questions directly to the customer. Another tool, especially when you're doing product UX testing, you don't necessarily need to talk directly to the customer, but you want to, when you're testing prototypes or using user testing or whatever it is, make sure you're screening as much as possible for people who might be using your product. So whether your client base leans heavily male, female, manager, new individual contributor, whatever it is, try to get a representative sample so that the person that you're having test is as close as possible to the actual product user as you can be.
Mm-hmm.
I will second everything Tim has just said, because I just had to live through that last year when I joined this company here. And I turned out customer success team was very big, and they were very in touch with the users. So, and I know I had to kickstart and bootstrap a user research function because we were thinking of building some critical features. Part of the reason I was brought on board in that place. And so I also realized the product managers were also going through customer success. So understand where the dynamics are, right? And I had to make good relationships with the VP of customer success. I had to make relationships with the key customer success manager, especially with the folks who are in touch with the enterprise account. So this is also B2B business. 90% of my career has been with B2B. There are two type of sales folks. One who will be leading with the fat cats, the whales, or enterprise folks who bring in anything above $5 million into the company, depending on your revenue cycle. Or there will be customer success folks who would just bring in 100,000, 50,000, who'll be dealing with those customers, what we call the small fish. So after having made my relationships, I was asking a lot of these questions that, okay, for the user research, we want to talk to the users, show their buyer personas. For them, we can find out what is affecting their renewals, or why wouldn't they want to get 3 more years of syndicated report experience, stuff like that. And for new features, I thought I just want to have users that really play with the product. So it's very important you give that breakdown of the personas to the customer success managers, because nothing against them, they don't know the finer details of those personas. Product managers and UX folks understand that, but they have good understanding who the users are. They have great relationships. So all it takes is just getting some of the buyer folks initially first, making relationships with them, and they let them warm up to you. And after that, they will introduce you to the 5 or 6 or 7 users they like, because they also don't want to waste anyone's time. They need to start trusting you. So trust needs to build between customer success managers and yourself and some of the key customers. But yes, do not relent. Right? You have to really what you have to do is make sure that you actually get to the users, even if it's 3 or 4 users that you really want to talk to. You really don't want to base your decisions on the wrong persona, because it's going to really bite you later.
Yeah.
And
I have a quick question for KD. I know that we're running out of time, but I just want, you had put up a slide of the virtual product discovery room in Miro that you used, and it was very hard to see, and you had indicated that you can't really share a link to the Miro board. I was just curious, is that, because it sounded very interesting and it sounded like it could be very valuable. Do you have a template of sort that you use on Miro for that, or
yes,
is it, could
yeah,
you
if you get
share
access,
the template?
yes, if you get access to
Great.
Mural for
Yes.
30 days, there are tons of templates you can play with.
And are you using a particular template for that particular one that you were showing on the slide?
Yes, that is the template we use. The what, the who, the why,
Yeah.
and the features. And then there's a separate section of flows. Everything is that on one.
Okay, I'll look for it and I might reach out to you just to, if in case I don't find it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for answering the question.
Also piggybacking off that question about getting the customer success team and the sales team involved, how do you kind of juggle that power between, like, I guess information you're getting from them, and then when the sales team starts giving you suggestions on new features? Because I find that sometimes you have to push back on the sales team too at times. And I wanted to know, I guess, how would you push back? Because like sometimes they'll say, I have this idea for this new feature based on one customer. And so how do you push back?
So I'll take it very quickly. I'm going to do a talk on this in UXPA September, called Ecosystem of a UX Leader, because this is really important. You can't get access to your users sometimes in B2B without paying homage to these teams. For one thing, let me talk about what you don't do. You don't stand on a pulpit and saying, no, what I really want, is this technique in user research or product management. For this, I want this. You are new in the company, say, or you are building a relationship with that team. It's going to be a more diplomatic relationship. You have to work with them. First, you have to show value. Why do you need that kind of info? Then you really tell them what kind of user you want. They'll get it for you, because they also don't want to jeopardize their relationship with the user, because you might know what you're talking about, right? So they'll take time to trust you. Be patient about it, and tell them that you cannot make good product decisions ultimately, which will affect them if you get it wrong, right? So if kind of flip it over to them, it's in their best interest going forward to work with you to bring the right users to the table. And now that has happened with me and my team here over a period of a year and a half, to the non-enterprise accounts, because the customer success folks it's not about they don't care, they don't want to spend time there. Those folks, we have our own relationships when we get users now, our own way, because they trust us. The enterprise accounts have sensitivities. So talk to them about, okay, what are the sensitivities that and some of these accounts may have, right? And one last point I'll make is, you once you get handle of the users, you want to make your own relationships, right? Don't just use and throw a user, right? Create a product user group, even if you get similar kind of feedback, but at least you got something going. Show some wins, and when you draw your insights based on 5 or 6 interviews you have done, I was making a point of the feedback. Take that, okay, the data you should capture, not bullet points of Word file, but like one readout, one slide out. I learned 3 things about something from these 10 users. Hey, sales folks, I want to give it back to you. They'll say, oh, I never heard about it, because they're always biased in their renewals and making the customer happy kind of mindset. And you have kind of attacked it from an objective perspective, because you ask questions that they necessarily don't think they would ask, or didn't think they would need to ask. Does that make sense? Tim, you want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you.
No, Katie, that was great. Let's keep going in case there are more questions.
I have a quick question. I work for a B2B as well. I'm a UI UX designer. I deal mainly with software and mobile applications. And I noticed there's quite a little bit of conflict with product and development. A lot of mainly pushback from product that built an old software and has been totally, now we're doing a cloud-based product. Do you guys have any suggestions on how to deal with that kind of conflict? Even if we're doing the research, I notice they seem to get caught up on little UI patterns and layouts and stuff like that. They don't accept it like development does it, but product is willing to go with the research, whatever me and the other UXers come up with. However, it's just the pushback that we get from development and how I should approach it.
Tim?
Tough question. But.
Katie, you get throwing me the hard ones, man. Come on.
I can take it. In my experience, what really helps is documenting those patterns, and again, showing the value and how, if those patterns are established, how it will make devs' life easier.
Okay.
Right? Once they see it's in their interest to move really fast, they go along with it. I've found product management to be mostly in agreement, unless it throws their entire release cycle off base because you're introducing something new. If you are in agreement with product management and you are able to articulate, communicate, over-communicate the value of something to development team, and even give them suggestions on how we can break this up and do in a piecemeal fashion rather than this big feature, they will work with you. But it mostly happens because designers come up with something, they wrap it up, put a ribbon on it, and throw it over the wall to development, and then it's like, crap, we have 4 weeks to do this.
Mhm.
That's why I keep saying engage early, talk early, let them barf at this early, let them throw a wrench at it early, and then you will see the rest of the process will go much smoother, right? And over a period of time, we are all people. We start trusting each other that we're not going to take advantage of each other. It will smoothen out. But you, just like with anything, you have to keep relationships really clean and symbiotic.
Yeah, just adding to that, thanks, Katie. Relationships are the absolute key to that, and also a common tool is just simplifying and downscoping. So many engineers have a little bit of a completionist streak, like every edge case has to be taken care of or addressed, and you can address them. It doesn't have to be a fully functional, perfect solution. As long as there's an answer to, if we start going down this road, what happens? You can either say, well, that road is, 0.01% of users, or you can say, here's an elegant way to kind of steer them back towards the main path. We're not going to let them go down that road right now. If people really start banging against that door, then we can open that door and start going down that road. But for now, let's focus on making sure that the core experience is really strong for the 99.9% of users who are using our product or mobile application.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I just have an open-ended question. I recently graduated, so I'm fairly new to this field. And what I wanted to just ask is what are the the feelings or the practicalities towards working on a project using the techniques that you described here in a field that you're not necessarily an expert in or might have even ever heard before? And is there anything that any life experiences that you want to impart that's not obvious in your first readout through for project and product management and design?
Wow. I'm looking at you, Tim.
Well, I'm going to plug Michael and BPMA here because I think one of the best things you can do is get involved in the community and really make sure you're kind of soaking up as much as you can. I'd also say, to the extent that you can either work on your own projects or find teams to collaborate with, even if they're just for fun or just exploring an idea that may be outside of your day-to-day work or your day-to-day studies, whatever those are. Real projects with hands-on experience drive learning a lot faster than kind of either just reading or reflecting. If you have something real to work on and that you're trying to maybe bring to market or build your portfolio with, that's something that's really useful and fulfilling.
So very quickly, quick fire suggestions. First, you can do any exercise yourself, right? If you're product management, especially, you can do research yourself. You can pick up a technique. Many things Tim talked about, I talked about. Pick one thing. Don't try to do a little bit of everything. Pick one technique that really piques your interest and focus at it and do it yourself. And then build a Kano model or a 2x2 matrix to identify what's high frequency, high pain. The data is out there. I bought a Tesla in 2019. I was really into the journey mappings and experience mappings at that time. I started keeping a diary. I did a diary study of myself buying a Tesla, and that later on the diary study became an experience map. I wrote a Medium article on that, and I didn't realize so many people found so much value out of it. It's just not it's never going to go to waste. You can do all those things yourself, but early in your career, don't try to do everything, right? Just pick something that's really passionate to you, and go and just practice that as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, go ahead, please.
I had a question about a sort of product strategy. I recently joined a new team, and the product strategy seems to be the roadmap, which I don't find to be very strategic. And so I guess I was wondering if you have any tips on getting product to create an actual kind of strategy. Like I was thinking of creating some sort of UX outcome metrics and then sharing those with product and saying, like, can we make this sort of like a foundation to our team strategy? But is that a good plan? Is there a better way to go about that?
I'll let Tim take that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go about it. The other tool that I think is really undervalued is just sitting your leadership team down and having a conversation with them and facilitating a conversation like, all right, don't name features. Tell us, like, what are our key goals for the next 3 to 6 to 12 months? Because the roadmap, having a roadmap be the strategy is kind of like having the tail wag the dog. Like the roadmap could be everywhere, as you rightly pointed out. But having some unifying themes that really drive value for your customers and for your business are the most important pieces. And that's going to come from everyone on your leadership team, sales, customer success, marketing, product, UX, engineering. Together, you're building a business that has to function holistically, and if sales is saying like, build this, build this, build this, engineering is going to be like, we've got a sloppy mess over here and nothing works. So it all has to hang together. And I just recommend like facilitating a conversation at that level, because then the product strategy and the roadmap become really easy to put together. But if you let the roadmap drive things for too long, then sales starts looking at the roadmap and being like, why are we building this? Like, it is so disconnected from what my customers are asking me for and what I'm trying to sell. So.
Thanks. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, any other questions here? And I'll send out their emails as well via Eventbrite, so you'll get those. So feel free to follow up. You can also connect on the BPMA Slack. I also will do one last plug for the feedback survey. We do actually read them. We do make changes. So please feel like those 4 questions in your input there aren't wasted or falling into a black abyss somewhere. But if there aren't any other questions, we'll thank our speakers for their time and the insight this evening, you all for attending, and hope you have a great rest of your evening and good rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael, for having us.
Of course.
Yeah, likewise.